Welcome back to Inside City Hall. In this election year, Democrats and Republicans have been locked in an intense fight for control of the House of Representatives. And with a number of tough races here in New York, the state is a major battleground in that fight. One of the most closely watched races is for a newly drawn congressional district, the 6th in Queens, which stretches from Flushing to Bayside to Glendale. It is the only congressional district in the state that is plurality Asian. Joining me here in the studio are the two candidates in that race. Dan Halloran, a member of the City Council, is running on the Republican and Conservative Party lines, and Assemblywoman Grace Meng is running on the Democratic and Working Families Party lines. Thank you both for joining us. I know it was a kind of a hassle to get all the way out here, and you've got some issues in your district related to Sandy, and that's where I want to start. I'll start with you, Councilman.
Sure.
What have you learned from the last week and the events of this that would be of help to you, and how would you take that with you if elected to Congress?
Well, the first thing is we've kept our council office open for the 48 hours of the storm, and to see the hundreds of people who called in with issues, it just reinforces the fact that hands-on, community-based operations is what every elected official needs to be doing. You need to be out there in your district. When crises happen, you have to be willing to respond. You have to have a team with you who's going to do that. And that's probably the biggest message that we have going forward. You got to be there for the community, and you got to make sure that they know that they have a lifeline in your office.
Same question.
First, I want to thank NY1 for doing such a wonderful job on getting the message out to all of our constituents. You've been sort of an integral part of our emergency system here in New York City. I want to thank our first responders, too, for the amazing work and the sacrifices that them and their families have made. You know, like Councilman Halloran said, my office has also been in constant access with our constituents since the beginning of the storm. We've provided services and hotlines in various languages just to ensure that we are hearing what all the concerns of the constituents are. And this really reinforces one of the most important parts, messages that I've been talking about in my campaign, which is the need to increase and make sure that our infrastructure here in New York City and our mass transit system is stronger than it has been in the past. Our mass transit system was not built for storms like this, and Governor Cuomo said it best, that we're getting 100-year storms every 2 years. We need to rebuild bigger and better.
I know you're not a fan of big government spending, Dan Halloran. Has anything you've seen this week maybe changed that equation a little bit as far as investments in infrastructure?
Well, look, infrastructure investment is something that the city has always had a need for, but I think this storm proved one thing. Con Edison has not brought our power lines underground in the outer boroughs. And there's talk about how that cost isn't there to justify it. But I think we've had 3 storms, and I think my opponent, who's a friend and colleague, the Assemblywoman who's worked with me on so many of these over the last 3 years, knows very well we've had our constituents lose their power en masse over the last 3 storms because of the overhead wire situation. Now, Con Edison is doing a great job restoring the power, but the point is we could avoid a lot of these issues by looking at investment there. And remember, they have a monopoly. The Public Service Commission gives them the right to go out and basically be the cornered market for energy.
Sure.
They have an obligation to our citizens, and it's not just government that has to look at infrastructure development. It's also our public service utilities.
So to be clear, your position is Con Edison should bear the cost of burying the power line?
Absolutely. Right now, what they've spent in the last 3 storms to replace the lines that have gone down probably would have gone a long way to burying the lines in the first place. And I think government has a role in helping by coordinating that. I've suggested to the mayor's office that we coordinate our drilling and our digging with Department of Environmental Protection, for water and sewer issues, our Verizon and Time Warner Cable, so that when they're going in, we don't have them ripping up and tearing down, ripping up and tearing down. Do it in a coordinated fashion. That'll reduce costs for everybody going forward.
Well, let's talk about something you're both going to have to deal with, depending on which of you ends up in Congress. That is the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. There is quite a lot of sentiment for repeal. It's quite plausible, in fact, that legislation to repeal it will land on your desk within a few weeks of taking office. I'd like to hear from both of you how you would respond to that and what your general thoughts are about Obamacare.
Obamacare, the Affordable Health Care Act, is not a perfect act, and we all know that. I think we need to work together on a bipartisan level to ensure that we improve the law. But because of this law, America has made tremendous strides towards providing better health care for more people. I mean, you take a look at specific situations for 6 babies who are born to parents who, because of their insurance coverage, may not be able to provide health care for their baby. And that's, these are examples including the young people who are one of the largest number of adults without insurance insurance coverage now have insurance coverage in New York State. I think those are tremendous, important points, and we need to make sure that we improve it.
Well, look, I think it has to go, and here's why. It wasn't drafted in a bipartisan manner. It doesn't address any of the real issues. For example, buying policies across state lines, enabling tort reform to go forward. These policies will actually harm our small businesses. And around the country, hundreds of thousands of small business owners have said they can't opt in. In addition, people actually won't get covered. See, New York has a great opportunity to expand its Health Plus program, which, of course, Governor Pataki was instrumental in expanding and getting throughout the state of New York. And our low-income and middle-income families, on a sliding scale, are able to already do what Obamacare proposes, but in a much more efficient way. And it does it at the state level, where health care decisions really belong. If we want to solve the problem long term, we have to address buying across state lines. We have to look at our healthcare providers and talk to them and have a conversation with them. My colleague, the Assemblywoman, is absolutely right. It's got to be bipartisan, but it also has to be fiscally responsible, not going to shut down small business, and actually solve the problem. So many people will opt out of buying this and simply pay the tax that we won't wind up covering the very people who the plan envisions covering. And of course, we're taking some of the money out of Medicare, $716 billion. Yes, over 5 years it may get recouped, but for the first 5 years of implementation, there are going to be a lot of seniors with a lot of holes and bills to fill.
So your position is those are fatal flaws? In other words, if a
fatal defects, absolutely.
A repeal bill lands on your desk, you will vote
I'll
for
go
repeal?
forward with it. Yeah, but I will also be advocating at the same time for us to empower our states to do what Health Plus is doing right now in New York, which solved a lot of the problems. If we could have expanded that and eliminated fraud, waste, and mismanagement, which State Senator Padovan did an excellent report on just a few years ago, showing almost 1/3 of Medicare Medicaid costs wind up in that box of fraud, waste, and mismanagement. We could reinvest that, we could expand Health Plus, and we could cover all those people who are contemplated by this Affordable Care Act.
Okay, folks, we're going to move on to some other issues. Please stand by. We're going to take a short break, then we'll have more of this debate. We're also going to allow the candidates to ask each other a question. Later on, we'll be joined by the woman behind the New York City Marathon, Mary Wittenberg. We're going to ask her if the city is ready for this weekend's race. Stay with us.